Point Reyes, California, September 30th, 1951. Just before nightfall. The Pacific is black, not dark, black. The kind of black that has no bottom, no horizon, no shore. A thick gray fog has swallowed the coastline whole, and the only sound is the ocean doing what the Pacific does best, moving, heaving, indifferent to everything alive inside it. 2 miles offshore, a Douglas AD-1Q Skyraider, a single-engine naval torpedo bomber built for war, not for hitchhikers, hits the surface of the water and goes under in seconds. 2 men claw their way out of the sinking cockpit, one of them you have never heard of. Not yet. He is 21 years old, 6'4", a private in the United States Army, returning to base after a weekend visiting his girlfriend and his parents in Seattle. He is not a hero. He is not a star. He is not anything yet. He is just a very tall kid in a wet uniform, treading water in the dark Pacific Ocean, watching the only light he had, the blinking instruments of a World War II bomber, disappear into the black below him. His name is Clint Eastwood, and he has no idea that somewhere beneath him, in the cold, dark water he is kicking away from with everything he has, the great white sharks are breeding. He will not find that out for decades. Decades later, a white-haired man will sit before a lecture hall full of young film students at Loyola Marymount University and smile, a slow, quiet smile that has ended 1,000 conversations, and tell them the one detail about that night that would have stopped his heart cold if he had known it. We will get to that moment. We will get to that smile. But not yet. Here's what most people miss. Most people believe Clint Eastwood became Clint Eastwood in the Spanish desert outside Madrid, 1964. In a poncho he bought himself, squinting through cigar smoke he absolutely hated, in front of a director who didn't speak a word of English. Most people point to that moment and say, there. That's where the legend started. They are wrong. The legend started here. In the dark. In the water. 1.5 miles from a shore he could not see. This is not a story about Hollywood glamour. This is not a story about box office records or gold statuettes or a name above the title. This is a story about a night when the Pacific Ocean tried to swallow a man whole, and the man refused. To understand what happened in that water, you have to understand who was in it. Clint Eastwood Jr. was born in San Francisco in 1930, Depression-era California. His father chased work up and down the state, a man named Clinton Sr. who loaded gas at filling stations, hauled freight, ran a steel plant. Whatever kept the family from going under, they moved constantly. 14 schools before Clint finished high school. You don't grow roots like that. You grow something else, something harder, quieter, less easy to name. By the time the Korean War draft notice arrived, young Eastwood had already done things most men twice his age hadn't touched. Logged timber in the Oregon mountains, drove trucks across the Mojave, stoked furnaces at a steel plant in Seattle that hit 120 degrees in the belly of summer, worked as a lifeguard at a public pool, a job he was good at, though nobody was particularly paying attention to what he was good at back then. He had no plan. No ambition he could have written down on paper. He was just a tall, quiet kid with a jaw like a ledge and eyes that didn't blink much, moving through a country that had its own momentum and pulling him along with it. March 1951. The draft notice comes. He reports to Fort Ord, California, a sprawling army base pressed up against the fog and the dunes of Monterey Bay. Basic training, then an assignment. Most of the men in his unit shipped straight to Korea, into a war that was eating young Americans faster than the country could replace them. Eastwood's name didn't come up. He would later say simply that he was lucky. But luck is a lazy word for what actually happened. What happened is that Eastwood walked into his captain's office, a private, walking uninvited into an officer's space, which takes a specific kind of nerve, and made a case. He said he could run the base swimming pool. He said he was qualified. The captain looked at this 6'4" private, with the slow drawl and the unreadable face, and apparently decided he was telling the truth. He got the job. It was, by all accounts, a good life. Easy hours. Freedom. At the NCO club, he worked weekend nights as a bouncer, another job that suited his particular combination of size and stillness. You don't need to throw many punches when you look the way Eastwood looked. You just need to stand there and let a man do the math. In the barracks and around the base, he met 3 other young men who were, like him, waiting for something without quite knowing what. Their names were David Jansen, Martin Milner, and Richard Long. All 3 would go on to become working actors in Hollywood. None of them knew that yet. They were just soldiers, playing cards and killing time on the California coast, the war grinding away somewhere on the other side of the world without them. Pay attention to this. 4 young men, 1 army base. All 4 destined for Hollywood. None of them with a plan to get there. Sometimes a life doesn't announce itself. It just begins assembling, quietly, in the background, the way a storm builds offshore before anyone on the beach has noticed the sky changing color. September 29, 1951. Eastwood takes a weekend pass up to Seattle, visits his girlfriend, visits his parents. A normal weekend for a 21-year-old soldier with a soft posting and money in his pocket. He says his goodbyes. He heads to the airfield. Now, here is the moment, the invisible hinge on which everything turns. In those days, military personnel could travel free on any available flight. You put on your uniform, you walked up to the manifest, and if there was a seat, it was yours. Eastwood arrives at the airfield and scans the board. 1 flight going south toward Fort Ord. 1 plane, a Douglas AD-1Q Skyraider. If you have never seen a Skyraider, picture this. A single-engine naval attack bomber from the Second World War. Massive, brutish, built to carry torpedoes and rockets and 500-pound bombs under its wings. The cockpit is designed for exactly 1 man. There is no passenger configuration, no comfort. No egress protocol for anyone sitting where a passenger technically should not be sitting. The plane was built to deliver ordnance to enemy ships. It was not built to carry a hitchhiking Army private home from Seattle. Eastwood climbs in anyway. The pilot, Lieutenant Francis Coleman Anderson, runs through his checks. The engines turn over. 2 Skyraiders lift off from Naval Air Station Seattle, bound for Mather Field in Sacramento, with Fort Ord as Eastwood's eventual destination. Almost immediately, things begin to go wrong. The 2 planes hit weather north of San Francisco. Clouds. Thickening fog. The radios fail, then the oxygen. The 2 aircraft lose each other in the overcast, somewhere above the Northern California coast. Anderson, now flying blind, begins to feel something no pilot wants to feel. The gauges dropping, the engine note changing, the fuel running low. Over Point Reyes, the tanks run dry. The Skyraider goes silent. Anderson has 1 option left. He puts the nose down, reads the black surface of the Pacific rising up to meet him, and he does the only thing a pilot can do when everything has failed. He lands it on the water. The Skyraider hits the surface, stays upright for a breath, 1 single breath, and then the nose goes under, and the ocean takes it, and within seconds there is nothing above the waterline but 2 men in life rafts and the Pacific fog closing in around them like a curtain being drawn. Eastwood inflates his raft, gets on it, tries to find Anderson in the dark. The waves are running hard, 3 and 4 feet, crashing and pulling in every direction. He can hear the surf somewhere ahead of him. Somewhere. The shore is out there, invisible behind the fog and the dark. Maybe 2 miles, maybe more. Then the wave hits. The raft goes over, and Clint Eastwood is alone in the Pacific Ocean, with nothing between him and the bottom of the sea, but the strength in his arms and everything Fort Ord ever taught him about staying alive in the water. He starts swimming. There is a specific kind of terror that has nothing to do with courage or cowardice. It is the terror of a man who cannot see the bottom, cannot see the shore, cannot see anything at all except the dim glow of bioluminescent plankton, lighting the water around him in cold pulses of blue and green, a ghostly, beautiful light that his exhausted brain cannot process correctly. Richard Schickel, Eastwood's friend and biographer, would later write that near the end of the swim, Eastwood became convinced he was hallucinating, that the lights in the water were not real, that none of it was real. He kept swimming anyway. The water is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius, cold enough to begin shutting a body down within the hour, cold enough that every breath coming in feels like a fist closing around your lungs. Every time Eastwood gets close enough to the shore to hear the breakers clearly, to feel the sand pulling at the current beneath him, the undertow reaches back out and drags him away from it. 3 times, maybe 4. The ocean does not negotiate. It does not care how far he has come or how badly he needs to reach the other side of it. What it does not know, what it cannot account for, is that this particular young man spent the better part of a year teaching soldiers how to survive exactly this. The stroke mechanics, the breathing rhythms, the way panic burns through oxygen twice as fast as calm does, and how you have to choose consciously every 30 seconds to be calm. He had taught other men to stay alive in water. Now he was using every single lesson on himself. He does not stop. His hands find something solid. Kelp, then rock, then mud. He pulls himself forward. Falls. Pulls again. His knees find ground that doesn't move. He crawls. Flat on his stomach in the mud of the Point Reyes shoreline, the Pacific still trying to drag him back by the ankles. He crawls away from the water and does not stop crawling until the ground is dry and the ocean is behind him. Then he finds the lights of the KPHRCA radio receiving station. He walks inside, soaking, shaking, barely coherent, and tells the radio operators that a plane went down, that the pilot is still out there, that his name is Clint Eastwood, and he is a private in the United States Army and he needs help. The radio operators warn him. Get word out. Coast Guard launches from Point Reyes Station. Lieutenant Francis Coleman Anderson, who managed to keep his raft upright where Eastwood's capsized, comes ashore at Kehoe Ranch near Pierce Point with the raft still intact. Both men alive. Both men uninjured in the clinical sense of the word. No broken bones, no lacerations. Just 2 human beings who went into the Pacific at nightfall and came out the other side of it. The Independent Journal runs it on the front page the next morning, October 1st, 1951. 2 servicemen. Fog. Strong surf. An AD bomber on the ocean floor. 2 miles off Point Reyes. And a name. Army Private Clint Eastwood. Printed in newsprint for the very first time. He is back at Fort Ord within days. Back at the pool. Back at the NCO club on weekend nights. Watching men decide whether to start trouble, and deciding for them. The crash is behind him. He doesn't talk about it much. That is not his way. Something happened out there in the water. Something that does not have a clean name. And he has filed it away in the place where he keeps things that are too large for ordinary conversation. And right here, right at this moment, is where most people think the story ends. Soldier survives a plane crash, swims to shore, goes back to his life. A good story for a bar, something to tell your grandchildren. The kind of thing that happens to a man and then recedes, the way all near misses eventually recede into the background hum of a life that keeps moving forward. But the ocean didn't just save Clint Eastwood that night. It aimed him. Like a round leaving a barrel, one direction, no hesitation, no deviation, it aimed him at something he could not yet see. And if you have stayed with me this far, stay a little longer. Because what happens next is the part that changes everything. What happens next is the part that proves that some stories don't end on the shore. Some stories are just beginning there. The newspaper story runs one day. Then it is gone. That is how the world worked in 1951. A front page was 24 hours of attention. Then the presses rolled again and something else took its place. The crash at Point Reyes becomes a curiosity, then a footnote, then nothing. Eastwood goes back to Fort Ord, the pool, the barracks, the slow grind of army time, which moves differently from civilian time, heavier, more repetitive, measured in formations and mess calls, rather than ambitions and deadlines. He has no agent, no headshot, no connection to Hollywood beyond the fact that he lives in the same state as it. He is 21 years old, and the most remarkable thing he has ever done is survive something that should have killed him. That is not nothing, but it is not a career. And yet, stay with me. Because somewhere on that army base, on the day or the week after the Independent Journal runs its front-page story, a man named Chuck Hill is doing his job. Hill works for Universal Studios, a location scout, a fixer, a man whose entire professional value lies in being in the right place and knowing the right people. Universal is shooting something at Fort Ord. Nothing important. A background plate, a location sequence, the kind of work that gets a line in the production report and nothing else. Hill sees the newspaper. He reads the name. He looks up. And there, walking across the Fort Ord grounds with the particular loose-limbed stride of a man who has never been in a hurry because the world has always eventually come around to his pace, is Clint Eastwood, 6'4", 21 years old. A jaw that could cut glass and eyes that seem to be measuring everything they look at without giving anything back. If you had been watching from the Fort Ord fence that day, you would have seen nothing dramatic. Just a man noticing another man, 30 seconds, maybe less, the kind of moment that leaves no record anywhere. Hill makes a decision. A small one, 30 seconds, no record of it anywhere. He is going to help this kid. He doesn't fully know why. He just knows what he knows, which is that he has spent enough time around cameras and sets and studio lighting to understand that certain faces do something specific when light hits them. And this face does that thing. He files it away. He keeps moving. He finishes his work at Fort Ord. Here's the part nobody tells you. Nothing happens immediately. This is not a movie. There is no swelling score, no montage of handshakes and screen tests. Eastwood finishes his service. Honorably discharged in 1953. He takes his GI Bill money and enrolls in Los Angeles City College to study drama. The way Arthur Lubin had vaguely suggested. The way a man follows advice when he has nothing better to do. And the advice sounds as good as anything else on offer. He works nights at a gas station in Los Angeles to cover his rent. A 23-year-old ex-soldier pumping gas in the dark, studying acting during the day, with no particular reason to believe that either of those activities is going to amount to anything. Then, Chuck Hill reappears. Hill has kept his word to himself. He has contacts inside Universal. He knows a cinematographer, a Polish-American named Irving Glassberg, one of the most trusted eyes on the Universal lot. A man who has shot dozens of their pictures through the 40s and 50s and whose opinion on what works in front of a lens carries genuine weight. Hill takes Eastwood to the Universal lot, not through the front gate, through a side entrance, the kind of entrance you use when you are not entirely sure the person you are bringing inside has been formally invited. With the help of a telephone operator who has taken a liking to Eastwood, because telephone operators in 1953 Los Angeles, like almost everyone else who ever spent more than 5 minutes around the man, apparently found him difficult to refuse. Hill gets Eastwood in front of Glassberg. Glassberg looks at him, takes his time. The way a cinematographer looks at a face is different from the way a civilian looks at a face. He is reading the planes of it. The way the light catches the cheekbones, the way the eyes hold without flickering, the way the jaw sits. He is asking a specific technical question that has nothing to do with acting. He is asking what this face does when a camera looks at it. His answer, recorded later by biographer Richard Schickel, is this. Eastwood was exactly the sort of good-looking young man that had traditionally done well in the movies. That is all it takes. Glassberg picks up the phone. He calls Arthur Lubin, a director he has worked with on picture after picture at Universal. A man with a real eye for talent and a real nose for faces that have not yet been discovered. He tells Lubin he needs to meet someone. Lubin drives to the gas station where Eastwood is working that evening. Think about that for a moment. A Universal Pictures director, driving to a gas station in Los Angeles to meet a kid pumping fuel in the dark. Lubin gets out of his car. He looks at Eastwood across the forecourt. At the height, the stillness, the particular quality of presence that some people carry without knowing they carry it. He will later say simply that Eastwood was so tall and slim and very handsome looking. What he does not say, what he does not need to say, is that in 30 years of working in Hollywood, he has learned to trust the thing that happens in his chest when he sees a face that belongs on a screen. That thing is happening right now. He arranges an audition. It is a disaster. Eastwood stands in front of the camera and does not know which way to turn, does not know where to put his hands, delivers his lines through his teeth in a slow, grinding drawl that sounds, to the Universal executives watching, like someone learning to speak for the first time. Lubin is not unkind. He tells Eastwood exactly what he sees, that the talent is raw, that the instincts are not there yet, that he needs training, real training, before anyone is going to put him in front of a paying audience. Then he does something that nobody in that room expects. He signs him anyway. April 1954, $100 a week. A contract with Universal Pictures, the same studio that, within the year, will share a parking lot with another struggling young actor named Burt Reynolds. The same studio that will look at both of them and see everything they are not, while somehow managing to miss everything they are. But that comes later. For now, there is just a 23-year-old ex-soldier with a gas station job and $100 a week, and a contract that says, for the first time in his life, in black ink on studio letterhead, that someone believes this face is worth something. The plane went down 2 miles off Point Reyes. The Army taught him to swim. The swim got him on the front page. The front page put him in front of Chuck Hill. Chuck Hill put him in front of Irving Glassberg. Irving Glassberg put him in front of Arthur Lubin. Arthur Lubin put him in front of a camera. Remove any one of those links, any single one, and you are reading a very different story right now, or no story at all. Universal Pictures in 1954 is a machine, not a dream factory, a machine. It runs on schedules and budgets and the cold arithmetic of what sells tickets and what doesn't. It has a product. The product is a certain kind of face, a certain kind of voice, a certain kind of presence that fits neatly into the mold the studio has been casting since the 1930s. Clean, warm, approachable. The kind of man your mother would trust and your sister would marry. Clint Eastwood is none of those things. He is stiff in front of the camera in a way that no amount of drama class seems to fully correct. He delivers his lines slowly, not thoughtfully slowly, not Gary Cooper slowly, but slowly, in the way of a man who simply refuses to be rushed by anyone, including the director. His Adam's apple moves visibly when he talks. He has a chipped front tooth that the studio keeps asking him to fix and that he keeps not fixing, for reasons he never fully explains. He is, by the studio's own internal assessment, one of their least promising stars of tomorrow. Sharing the lot with him in those same uncertain months is a young actor from Florida named Burt Reynolds. Reynolds is fast where Eastwood is slow. Warm where Eastwood is cool. Instinctively actorly in all the ways Eastwood is instinctively not. They are friends, the kind of friends who tell each other the truth, because they are young enough to think the truth is still useful. 1955. Universal calls them both in. The studio drops Eastwood first. The official reason, delivered through the particular corporate language studios use when they want to destroy something without appearing to, is that Eastwood does not fit the Universal profile. The unofficial reason, the one that will follow him for decades, the one that Burt Reynolds will repeat in interviews for the rest of his life with the gleeful precision of a man who has perfected the telling of it, is simpler. Adam's apple too prominent. Talks too slow, chipped tooth, refused to fix it. Reynolds gets the call shortly after. His reason is different. They tell him he cannot act. The two men walk off the Universal lot together. Reynolds looks over at his friend, at the jaw, the Adam's apple, the slow, unreadable eyes, and says what friends say when the truth is the only comfort left. He tells Eastwood he is in a hell of a lot of trouble. He says, "I can learn to act." You can't get rid of that Adam's apple. Eastwood does not argue. He does not rage. He does not do the thing that lesser men do when they are humiliated. He does not make it loud. He makes a note. A private one, the kind that lives in the part of a man that doesn't speak but never forgets. The man who signed the dismissal papers is the head of casting, a Universal executive named Robert Palmer. Eastwood will carry that name for the rest of his career. When he has the power to hire and fire, Palmer will never work on an Eastwood picture. Not once. Not ever. That is not revenge. That is memory. Now, watch what happens next. With no studio contract, Eastwood scratches. Small television roles, guest spots, a motorcycle gang member on a highway patrol episode, a cadet in a West Point segment. Work that pays the rent and proves nothing and leads nowhere in particular. Then, in 1958, CBS gives him a role in a Western series called Rawhide. He plays Rowdy Yates, a cattle drover, young and eager, the opposite, in almost every respect of the character that will one day make him immortal. He grinds through 8 seasons, 217 episodes. The work is relentless and repetitive, and it teaches him something that no drama class ever could. It teaches him what a camera does to a face over time. What holds, what fades, what deepens. He is not a star, he is a working actor. There is an enormous difference, and then, in 1964, a letter arrives from Italy. The director's name is Sergio Leone. The film is called A Fistful of Dollars. The budget is $200,000. Leone has already offered the lead role to a list of American actors: James Coburn, Henry Silva, Ty Hardin, Charles Eastman, all of whom have passed. Because the money is modest and Italy is far and nobody makes careers in Italian westerns. The role comes to Eastwood because he can ride a horse and because $15,000 is enough. He takes it. The day before his flight to Rome, Eastwood walks into a costume shop on Hollywood Boulevard. He is going to build this character himself. Because Leone doesn't speak English and Eastwood doesn't speak Italian, and the script, written by Italians in Western slang, reads in places like a fever dream of the American Southwest, filtered through someone who has seen it only in other movies. If the character is going to exist, Eastwood is going to have to invent him. Black jeans from a shop on Hollywood Boulevard, a weathered hat from Santa Monica, cigar from Beverly Hills, a detail that will become one of the most recognizable images in the history of cinema, despite the fact that Eastwood finds smoking physically repellent and has to fight his own body every time Leone calls for another take. The poncho he finds in Spain, at a market near the shoot location in Almeria. He designs the man with no name from the outside in, the costume first, the stillness second, the voice, low, slow, words chosen the way a man chooses ammunition, third. Leone, on set, looks like what Eastwood will later describe as Yosemite Sam in a poncho. He communicates through Eastwood's stuntman, Benito Stefanelli, who shuttles instructions back and forth between a director who wants everything and an actor who is giving him something else entirely. Something Leone does not yet have a word for, but recognizes instinctively as correct. There are no trailers, no electricity on location in the Almeria desert, no toilet facilities beyond the rocks at the edge of the set. Eastwood will say later, without complaint, simply, "We just went out behind the rocks." 6 weeks. The shoot ends. Eastwood flies back to Hollywood, back to the final season of Rawhide, certain that he has made a mistake. Leone has not called. The Italian production company has sent no word. He reads a Variety article about a massive hit, Italian Western that is breaking box office records across Europe, and he shrugs it off, because the title is different from what he remembers, and nobody has mentioned his name. Then, a critic in Rome publishes a review. Near ecstatic, the kind of review that changes careers, and at the very end of it, in a trade paper being read by every working professional in Hollywood, the critic singles out the performance of one Clint Eastwood. He stares at his own name in print for a long moment. Then he calls Burt Reynolds. They screen a print of the film together, an Italian dubbed version, the dialogue spoken in a language neither of them understands even slightly. They sit in the dark and watch it and say nothing for the duration. They understand every single thing that is happening on screen. When it ends, Reynolds turns to Eastwood. He doesn't say anything about the Adam's apple. The next time Eastwood works for Universal Pictures, the studio that fired him for talking too slow and refusing to fix his tooth, he is paid $1 million. The man who fired him, Robert Palmer, is never hired on one of his productions. Some things you carry quietly. And somewhere in a lecture hall at Loyola Marymount University, decades from this moment, decades from the desert in Almeria and the gas station in Los Angeles and the dark water off Point Reyes, a white-haired man is about to smile. A student is about to ask him about the crash, about the swim, about the water, and he is going to tell them the one thing he didn't know that night. The thing that would have killed him if he had. The lecture hall at Loyola Marymount University is full of young people who want to make films. They are 20, 22, 25 years old. They have laptops and opinions and an enormous amount of certainty about the way the world works and the way careers are built and the way stories are supposed to go. They are watching a man in his 80s sit in front of them with the same quality of stillness he has always had. The same stillness that Universal Pictures once decided was a liability. And they are waiting for wisdom. He tells them about the crash, the Skyraider going under, Anderson on the radio, the raft overturning, the swim. He tells it the way he tells everything, economically, without decoration, the way a man describes something that happened to him, rather than something he performed. He does not linger on the fear, though the fear was real. He does not reach for drama, though the drama is obvious. He just moves through the facts the way he moved through the water, forward, steady, without stopping. And then he pauses. The pause that built 1,000 scenes. He looks at the room, and he says it, the line that reframes every single thing you have just heard. He says, "I found out many years later that it was a white shark breeding ground. But I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. Or I'd have just died." The room laughs. He lets the laughter settle. He does not fill the silence that follows it. He just sits there inside the silence, comfortable in it the way only a man who has made peace with the dark can be. And he lets the students do the math themselves. That swim, 2 miles through 50-degree water in a fog so thick you could not see your own hands, was through a white shark breeding ground. Every film he ever made, every frame of Dirty Harry and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby and Gran Torino and every quiet act of directorial courage and every scene that made you feel something you did not expect to feel. All of it existing, because a 21-year-old kid in a wet army uniform did not know what was in the water beneath him and kept his arms moving anyway. Here is the first thing to take from that. Ignorance, applied correctly, is armor. Eastwood survived the Pacific because he could not see what was beneath him. He survived Universal because he did not fully understand that men like Robert Palmer had the power to end him. He survived the Spanish desert and the Italian film industry and 30 years of Hollywood cynicism because he never quite believed the voices that told him what he was not. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is a complete and accurate understanding of your own odds. Sometimes not knowing saves your life. Here is the second thing. Every quality that Universal fired him for became the exact foundation of everything that made him irreplaceable. The slow drawl, the stillness, the chipped tooth he refused to fix. The Adam's apple that Burt Reynolds said could not be gotten rid of. Leone didn't just tolerate those things. Leone built a mythology around them. The world will always carry people whose only skill is identifying what you are not. The work, the only work that matters, is finding the one person who can see what you are, and then becoming it so completely that the people who couldn't see it look foolish for the rest of their lives. Here is the third thing, the one that stays, a free ride on a military plane, a crash in the dark, a swim through water that should have ended everything, a newspaper story on a front page that nobody remembers, a man named Chuck Hill walking across a base in the right direction at the right moment, Irving Glassberg, Arthur Lubin, a gas station in Los Angeles, a letter from Italy, a poncho bought at a market in Spain. Remove any single link in that chain, any one, and there is no man with no name, no Dirty Harry, no Unforgiven, no lecture hall full of young filmmakers learning from the man who survived the water. The most important decisions of your life will not feel like decisions. They will feel like inconveniences, like wrong turns, like a plane going down in the dark and nothing left to do but swim. If you were Clint Eastwood in that water, freezing, alone, the shore invisible, the undertow pulling you back every time you got close, would you have kept going? Tell me in the comments. I want to know, because here is what that night actually proved. The ocean tried to keep him. The studio tried to stop him. The desert tried to break him. Italy tried to confuse him. And at every single point, in the water, in the audition room, in the Almeria dust, in the Italian dark of a screening room where he watched himself become something he had not planned to become, he did the same thing. He kept his arms moving. The ocean tried to keep him. It couldn't. Some men are just too stubborn to sink.